Hey there, BookTube. It's me. I'm back. I'm here a little early because for the month of September, I've been doing an under 200 challenge for myself personally. Because I discovered that I had a lot of books that were under 200 pages that I was just kind of ignoring in lieu of the bigger books. And while there's nothing wrong with that at all, I just wasn't picking them. So I figured if I went ahead and decided to challenge myself to only read books under 200 pages during the month of September, I would probably make quite a dent. So that's what I did. I ended up DNFing 3, which I had tried to read before, so this was their second chance, and they did not do well. That was Flower Children. I forget who that is by. Offshore by Penelope Fitzgerald, and The Windows Open, and I forget who that's by. The Flower Children, there was just too many dead animals right at the get-go. I was done. And I didn't like the way it was written. Very omniscient. The children were not human beings. It was really weird, and I just couldn't jive with it. With The Windows Open, the first story, I assume it's a set of short stories or it's like various stories that tie together. It was just too... The whole thing was about a man who owned a shop, and the main character, or the author, believed him to be a Nazi. And there was just too much focus on it, and it just drove me crazy. So I was like, nope. And then with Offshore, I tried several times, and I just didn't care. If you don't care by the first 30 pages in a 200-page book, you're done. So I gave up on those ones. As of today, which is either the 16th or the 17th, can my little thing tell me? Let's see. If I hover, will it tell me? The 17th. As of today, Monday the 17th, I have read 7 books. I have finished 7 books, which is why we're here today. I don't know if I'll have another 7 to report by the end of October or by the end of September, but fingers crossed. I started with a stack of 24 books that I pulled, and there are a couple I tried reading the first couple pages, and they just didn't jive with me right now, so those got put to the back. They'll get another try. I usually give them more than one try before I'm learning how to DNF, because I have discovered that my my TBR pile is obscene to me and is stressing me out. So I'm going to be DNFing a lot more frequently. Anywho, let's get into it. The first book I read and finished, which was also one that my husband picked for me to read last month that I didn't end up getting to, was The Futurological Congress by Stanislaw Lem. And in this book we follow, they call him Titchy, but Titchy is his last name. Okay, I-J-O-N is his first name, so I'm not even going to try. We'll just call him Titchy like everybody else. So we're following Titchy, who is a cosmonaut, and he is going to the Futurological Congress, which is taking place in Costa Rica. The Futurological Congress is hard to explain. It's very scientific, and it's based on projecting the future. While he's there, a giant coup breaks out in Costa Rica. Subsequently, stuff is put into the air and the water to make them complacent. Hallucinogenic benignomizers, which get put into the city's water system. When people aren't drinking enough of the water, then they start throwing shit into the air. And subsequently, him and a group of people end up in the sewers. He ends up frozen in time at one point because of his problem, because of injuries he sustains during this coup. And he wakes up, I believe it's the year 2039, and it's crazy. I don't want to ruin it for you. It is only 150 pages, 149 pages, so I've really given you a good chunk of the plot. However, that is what's written on the back for the most part. It was really well written. I enjoy Lem. I read Solaris and I really enjoyed it. And then I got the SadieRuin, and I don't know that I've read that one all the way through. Got to read that one all the way through. And I just knew I enjoyed his writing style, so whenever I look for Lem, or if I pick up Lem, I know I'm going to enjoy it, and I did enjoy this one. Like I said, his ideas of the world, his ideas of the advancement in medication is weird. Like, this was written in the 70s, copyright 74. The English translation, I should also mention that this one is translated by Michael Kandel. He's Polish, so everything's Polish, and it's translated. He hypothesizes that the government is no longer going to have control. It's going to be the pharmaceutical companies. And it's so true. A lot of the things that he prophesizes have either come to pass or could pass very easily right about now. And it's very interesting. Except for the rat people. I don't think we're going to see rat people for a while. But if you're into sci-fi and science and dystopian, etc., give the Futurological Congress a try. I'm sorry, I'm really phlegmy today. And yes, the mug is Pinkie Pie. The next one I read is E.M. Forrester's Where Angels Fear to Tread. This is a classic. I was not as enthralled with this one. What struck me, and this one ranks in at 181. So we're following what's her name? Lila, whatever. And her husband's passed. She is currently living with his family, with her daughter. And she is going to go off and see the countryside. Her brother-in-law recommends Italy, so her and a friend go off to Italy, where she falls in love with this man who is not wealthy at all, which pisses her in-laws off because they're very controlling. And they've decided that if their son is dead, she is going to be a widow for the rest of her life. She has no choice, blah, blah, blah. She stays in Italy to marry this man, and life isn't what she thought it would be. And then she dies giving birth to a son. The widow family, the family that from her deceased previous husband, decides they are going to go take this child. And they are going to rear the child because this Italian, who is not human to them, cannot possibly raise this child, and they want to have this. They have the daughter, so they want the other sibling to raise them together. And so the brother who had recommended Italy sets off to obtain the child, and calamity ensues. It was a good book. My problem with this book was it was 181 pages. And I thought that with all the stuff going on and with all the plot going on, it probably should have been closer to 300. It was like a 3-star read for me, which is neither good nor bad. That's like right in the middle for me. Like if it was 3, I'd recommend it to people who enjoy this type of literature, but I don't think I'll ever reread it. It's not something I plan to keep on my shelves. But am I angry that I took the time to read it? No. There are books like that happen. The next one I read, which is a very tiny little guy, probably a novella, is The Education of Augie Morasti, the Residential School Memoir by Joseph Auguste Morasti with David Carpenter. I got this is a University of Regina Press publication. I got this when I was in Canada. Several of my friends told me to read this. It's horrifying. It's not very big and it's absolutely horrifying, but it should be mandatory reading for anyone who lives in Canada. It should be mandatory reading for anyone who lives in North America, but I can't see the United States getting on board with being made to read this kind of stuff. So I would just say that Canada really needs this book. And it's just a collection of stories from a man who went to residential school about things that happened to him and his friends during that time. We also get some background from David Carpenter on how long the book took, things he had to do. Basically, Augie sent a letter to the U of R to try and find someone to help him write his memoir, and he does not write well, nor does he. English is not his first language, and subsequently he gets in touch with David Carpenter, and it takes years of communication to get anywhere. And subsequently we're left with this tiny little book, but it is a very poignant book, and it is horrifying. So I'm not even going to go into the stories. We've all heard them. Well, I know I grew up hearing them because my family does come from that. But if you're Canadian, you should know some residential school stories. Chances are you know survivors. And yeah, read the book. Then, because I apparently am on a total moment of classics, I read Manon Lescaut by Abbe Prévost. And that, I think his name is not Abby. I don't know why. It's Anton Francis Prévost. So I guess he published under Abbe. This is the Oxford World Classic Edition, which means it has all those gorgeous notes in the back that make it so much easier to read. This is translated by Angela Scholar. And so Manon Lescaut is a woman. And this is a story told by a male whose name is de Grieux. Now, or DG, as I mentally put him in my head so that I could just read it easier. He is of some wealth. He has gone through, he was in the military. He's looking at going into the priesthood, as was common during the Victorian, or no, this is pre-Victorian, it's 1753. During that time period, sons, second sons, etc. were expected to do other things because they weren't, they just weren't needed as much. You know, have an heir, then a spare. And so rather than join the priesthood, hold on, notifications on my phone. Rather than join the priesthood, he saw this woman, Manon, and he follows her, and he becomes her lover, and then she treats him poorly, and then basically his life goes downhill from there, and everything he does goes, like, it's a complete tailspin. He spends the rest of his life trying to make this woman happy, and it's miserable, and nothing ever works out. This was originally an appendices in a book that that Prévost wrote, I believe. Yeah, Memoirs d'un homme de qualité. So the memoirs of a man of quality. This is originally just a side note, and it is a really great little story because it packs a lot in. It's not attempting, like, where the angels fear to tread smashes a lot of stuff into a very tiny amount of pages. This has a couple of months. That's how quickly their lives degenerate. Subsequently, ending in utter peril. But you'll get there if you read it. So rather than try to, like, throw a bunch of years and stuff into a tiny book, they've just really gone with, I will put in this one appendices and expand upon it. And it ended up being 146 pages. I really enjoyed it. It is very much French literature. So if you like, but see, I love Victor Hugo. So I suspect if you like things like Victor Hugo, if you like Les Miserables, if you like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, you'll find a lot to like about this book. And yeah, happy I read that one. Then next, I read Sexing the Cherry by Jeanette Winterson, and I have a very controversial opinion in that I only gave it 2 stars. I did not like it at all. I barely finished it. I hated it. There was nothing I could like about this, and I think it's because I don't like magic realism. I struggle with magical realism, and my struggle is real, and it has to be very sparse. This was not sparse enough for me. There was too much. I couldn't, and I just stopped caring. It was, and I've read Junkie by William Burroughs, and I've gotten the point, and I've thought, okay, that's a whacked out book, but I get it. This I don't get. I'm sorry. I really wanted to like it. I loved Lighthouse Keeping. I thought that one was great by Jeanette Winterson. But Sexing the Cherry let me down. Subsequently, I have Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit also in my under 200s, and I don't know if I'm going to get to it because I'm afraid. This is a story about a woman, the dog woman, who finds a boy on a riverside and names him Jordan after a river. He becomes a captain and sails a ship and brings home fruit. And past that, you'd be hard-pressed for me to tell you what the heck is going on. It's just 160 some odd pages of I don't care. I got to a point about like 60 pages in, and I said to my husband, I can't do this anymore. And he's like, then just stop. And I was like, I can't let this win. Why does everybody love it so much? And I can see why everybody does love it. It's very bizarre. And it's not horribly written. It's just not my bag. So if you don't like magical realism, or if you struggle with the non-plausibility of things, then just ignore it. I know a lot of people love it, but I can't stand it, and yeah, no. Then, this one's going to be like 20 minutes long, I tell you, and it's only the halfway point. I read Sulfuric Acid by Emily Northome, which I saw on the Portal to the Pages, Sophie's channel. She read this for her around the world. I believe it was France. And I ended up hunting down a copy based off of what she had to say, and I'm really glad I did. It's an amazing satire. It is also, basically reality TV has gone just a little too far. And so a company decides to start up a new reality TV show called Concentration. It is exactly what you think it is. They are doing concentration camps for reality TV, and they hire people to be the guards and be horrible. There are death chambers. They treat them as they treated them in concentration camps, and it's just atrocious. No one has a name, everyone has a number, and this is the story of two ladies, one prisoner and one guard, and basically their experiences. And it's super short, and I thought, oh no, this is going to be bad. This is not going to be enough. But it is enough for what she does. And it was beautiful, and it was brilliant, and I'm really glad I picked it up. So if you're very morbid and you like satires and you're interested in what I've just mentioned, then hunt down a copy. It is totally worth it. It's not very long. It's 127 pages, but it is so good. This one is translated by Sean Whiteside. Did an amazing job. There's also where they split, because I'm Canadian, I've taken a lot of French. They stop using tu and they start using vous, which is going from a friendship to a more, it's like you would say tu to your best friend, you would say vous to a group of coworkers, or a coworker that you don't really know, but you know, like it's I want to say honorific, but that's not right. It's a more formal way, and so that is kind of explained, because while that would be just in the book and a French reader would ultimately know it, it is explained very nicely in the book through how the translators translated things. So awesome on that. The last book I finished, which I just finished last night, but I'll throw it in here, is The Sweater Quest, My Year of Knitting Dangerously by Adrienne Martini. And this one was a little over 200. It came in at 218 pages, but I threw it in because I figured it's about knitting, so I'm just going to be able to plow through it, and I did. It's a memoir about a woman who decides she is going to take on her Everest, and every knitter has one of these. I'm not sure I have one. I've had them over the years and I've just done them. So the next one I figure out is probably going to be something similar to what this woman did, which was the Mary Tudor by Alice Starmore. And she explains the whole litigiousness of Alice Starmore and the issues that a lot of knitters have with Alice Starmore and the way she behaves. But she also goes into, okay, I'm starting the sweater. I've never Fair Isled before. I'm going to Fair Isle. And here's the things that happen in the year as I do it. And here are all these famous knitters that I've talked to while I'm doing this for the book. And I really enjoyed it. I have a bunch of friends who don't think it's that great. And I have a bunch of friends who think it's okay. And really, I gave it 3 stars. It's not Stephanie Pearl McPhee. And it's not Claire Parks. But it is really good. And if you like knitting and that kind of stuff, and I think also if you aren't as used to knitting as, like, I had to keep in mind that this was published in like 2010. I think it's a later 2000. It's an earlier. It's been a while. Yeah, 2010. So if it was put out 8 years ago, then there are certain things that are going to be very different, and I can understand that. And I think a bunch of my knitting friends who read it didn't understand that a lot of the things we're used to weren't there at that point, and I can remember that they weren't there, so I guess I am allowing myself to put perspective in it. So if you're a hardcore knitter, it might not be your thing, but if you aren't a hardcore knitter, or if you're able to understand that we're talking about 2 different time periods in the knitting community, then I think it's a great book to read, and it's a humorous romp, and a lot of us can identify with it. And so that is everything I've read for the first half of September. I hope to go even harder on the last half. Fingers crossed. Bye, guys.